Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Let's Talk Marketing with Nathan A. Webster podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Webster, and excited to chop it up because I want to focus on, and I should say we want to focus on how the pandemic created a new consumer, Generation N. I got my man, the PDX marketing godfather, Kent Lewis. What's up, Kent?
How's it going? Good to connect with you. Always a
It
pleasure.
It is. It is a pleasure, and I don't want to make this into a big deal, but we have a couple of pandemics that are going on right now and where we're at. But you have some good fodder to kind of get us started because this whole Generation N thing is, I think it's like it's a brand new generation that I believe, especially like as I'm homeschooling my kids, like I can't go back to reach in my back pocket to say, remember when I did this or remember when, just use that. We no longer have that, especially with all these pandemics. So on the marketing side, I'm excited to chop this up with you. So where do you want to take us, my man?
So I'd like to just talk about a topic that has, as a marketer, has been front and center for myself and for my agency Anvil and my clients, and that is the changing face of consumer behavior. And I recently wrote an article for Smart Brief, basically at the end of August. So it's upwards of going on almost 2 weeks old right now as of for this recording. So basically, the part one of the discussion is what I've seen in terms of change in consumer behavior, which I'll talk through. Then I want to talk through a very fascinating introduction to Generation Novel or Generation N, as defined by Brian Solis, who's a known marketing and behavior guru and who has written a ton of books. He's very well established, and he's got some really good thinking that goes a little deeper in a little different direction than my article. So I just want to talk about some of the trends that I've seen, because while our behaviors changed during the pandemic, coronavirus, COVID age, there are certain things that are certain behaviors that are going to be more permanent and that's what we need to be thinking about as marketers versus the short-term changes. So I think Zoom has come and Zoom is here to stay. As much as there's Zoom fatigue right now, I think web conferences, remote work, so these are going to be sort of ingrained. They say that after about 60 days, you establish new habits. I've heard as low as 30, but the new research in terms of major shifts in your buying behavior is like more like 2 months, and we're well beyond that at 4 or 5 months. So with that said, the first thing I noticed in the trends as I did my own research and just pulled from my experience with clients and as an employer, as a entrepreneur and a business person and a marketer, and the first thing I noticed, and that you and I talked about, is this focusing on fundamentals. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom of the pyramid is food security and safety. And I think coronavirus has pushed us down the ladder. And further exacerbating that are, the racial and social unrest. You've got fires burning most of the Western states like never before. So like literally I have a friend that just posted this morning on Facebook, I've packed my van and I'm ready to evacuate. And he lives in Southeast Portland. And I mean like Hawthorne district. So I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? So I have not packed. And I'm not sure if you're aware, Nathan, but Vancouver, Washington has one of the worst air qualities in the greater Portland area right now, as well as right around 3 blocks from my office, North Williams, a famous busy street in Portland, has the lowest air quality in Portland. So I've advised my team to stay away from the office today until the wind shifts and things change. So basically we're back to the fundamentals. So brands, if you manufacture, sell essential products, you're doing really well. If you only appeal to the uber rich, they've been making more money than anybody else, the billionaires, during this process. So if you're in the 0.01% audience, you're probably okay. But if you're lower class to upper class, you're probably getting hit, especially if you're in the travel, tourism, and that sort of space. So focusing on the fundamentals, I think, is essential. So as a company, manufacturing or switching up your product line to appeal to a fundamental need and a fundamental price point during the recession that's happening right now is essential. Same with your marketing. Getting to core messages, I think, that are just resonate is really important. As I mentioned earlier, let's say that's the number one trend. Number two, and that's just an underlying theory on how you build your products and your services and how you market them. But the next, I think, is the living and working at home, working from home, working at home. A lot of different people use different, descriptors, but basically it's the new normal. And same as you mentioned earlier, homeschooling. I mean, kids are at home learning from home, and we're having the same challenges you are in terms of when we're doing this type of stuff, who's watching the kids and how are they learning, right? Every school, every teacher, every student is different. And now they're all supposed to be paying attention. And I mean, it's hard enough for you to pay attention to me talking in your own podcast. So I can imagine how hard it is for our kids to pay attention for, 6 hours a day or whatever it is. So living, working at home, I think that what that has pushed to us is delivery, pickup, low contact, low touch, no touch, exchange of goods. Travel and tourism has changed forever. So I think you're getting more augmented reality and ways to sell ideas and experiences. But really, it's a lot of webcasts, video casting, conference calls, And one interesting kind of, we have a client that is in the DIY space, the, Home Depot competitor, as it were. And there's a huge resurgence of people stuck at home, some not able to work, some not needing to work because their unemployment is more than their job was paying them, figuring out things to do, fix up their home or their apartment. So DIY is doing well. And then there's this whole pod living thing. So if you have a product that appeals to intimate groups of people, whether it's roommates, family, friends that are hanging together, is there a way to market to those pods that are happening? And that's a shorter term play because that will not last much longer beyond the pandemic. The third trend, remote communications and virtual experiences. So I've already alluded to that prematurely, but back to Zoom, back to streaming services, music, video, you name it. It changes marketing because now there's a chance to sponsor podcasts like ours to get in front of dedicated audiences. Well, initially podcasting took a dip in listenership in March when the commute stopped, but now as people are stuck at home and looking for things to keep their mind stimulated, they're listening, podcasting and listening to radio is up. So those are new channels that are worth evaluating, especially more and more people are cord cutting. Even this time we cut the cord just like 3 weeks ago because despite being at home most of the time, we're not really watching TV and don't need to spend $300 a month. So we just have high speed bandwidth and Disney Plus and Netflix and Hulu. So there are a lot of different behaviors that are changing.
And I think what's interesting is, like, say, going back to the fundamentals, if you're a marketer, you said for the uber rich, the uber wealthy, that 0.01, not even the top 1%, top 10%, here's where, if you have that debt, you don't want to take on more debt. So what do? You cut expenses. And some of that fundamental thing of cutting expenses is all that extra stuff. And I think some of that extra stuff, as you were saying, cutting the cord on the cable. I know I cut the cord on like my YouTube because I wanted to watch the Cobra Kai series. And then I found out it's now on my Netflix. And it's crazy because, what used to work, especially for ESPN, I haven't cut the cord on my cable. I probably won't. But one thing that I'm starting, and I only have it because of sports, but I probably will. You will start to see the sports from the Michael Jordan's The Last Dance. It only premiered on ESPN. Now it's on Netflix. There's a different strategy to where it's not about the ratings or the I will just say keep it on the ratings because it used to all be about the ratings. And I'm not saying ratings don't matter, but when you start seeing ads, I'm seeing ads on Snapchat. I'm seeing ads on TikTok. I'm seeing more like when I'm saying seeing ads, I'm seeing more ads, longer ads, more interrupted because now they're just not going to TV because TV is no longer the only place. As you're saying, we're at home and they're like, oh, if he cut the cord on his cable, where can we promote our ad to them at? Like, where are they at? We got to find them. And I think in this new remote area, it's not about like, oh, let's go back to how we used to do it. It's like, no, it's a brand new ball game. And if you don't figure it out soon, like you were saying, like the living at home and making it more comfortable, not everybody wants to just veg. And what it used to be, a year ago, even 6 months ago, it's more, life is more to just vegging. So it's really interesting when you say remote communications, because people want to communicate, be comfortable, enjoy the entertainment that they do. And in order to do that, how do you get in front of them? And if you already not putting out anything on digital landscaping, like if you're not sponsoring a podcast, if you're not putting yourself on, say, Snapchat, learn how to build filters on Instagram, it's a different conversion. That customer journey map has been forever changed. So I don't know if it's like a Miss Pac-Man game instead of like a Candyland.
Yeah, yeah. That is the challenge. So we've got, you make a really good point, and I think we have to, basically what I've been doing is watching my own behavior as a consumer and figuring out how does that relate to my clients as a marketer. And I think, we're changing platforms, we're changing messaging, we're changing the online, offline consumer behavior. But really what's changed the most, and we'll talk about that in a second, is the consumer motivations and the behaviors related to this unique moment in time. And we'll talk about that's what's fueling this Generation N, Generation Novel. We'll talk about that. But to round out, there's a couple more, three more trends that I've noticed. Now, obviously, there's e-commerce, right? So brands that have an e-commerce capability are doing somewhere between staying afloat and thriving. So we have a client in the farm and ranch supply space that had projected to pay for their new e-commerce website over almost 2 years, and they paid for it in less than 3 months because they launched last October, and then COVID hit and everybody needed to order online their farm and ranch supplies, and they went gangbusters, set records. They're very happy with their investment, and we've been proud of the work we've done there. But not very many, not enough companies are making that digital migration. I source back to, I think we had a brief discussion on this on a previous podcast about the 30-year-old watch store downtown Portland that shut because of the riots and the looting and all of that. And I just was beside myself and like, frankly, as an entrepreneur, how did you let this happen? Right? Meaning, why aren't you online? Why don't you have a catalog if not e-commerce? Whose fault is that? And if you had, you wouldn't need your physical retail store. You'd still be in business. Not to say he won't reimagine himself as a online centric, but my point is, if he had made the digital transformation faster, the migration, he would have been largely immune from the massive loss of business from boarding up. It's really sad, but it's not a tanning salon, it's a watch store, and watch collectors just need to know where it is and the condition, the price, and they will buy. Then I alluded to this earlier as well, kind of the fifth trend is lower no-touch products or service delivery. So I continue to see how companies, particularly retailers, so food, beverage, and there's other retail services where there's a product exchange. Like, how do you make that maximum low or no touch? Burger King has redesigned their store to be no touch. I'm just reading an Ad Age or Ad Week. I didn't read the full article. I just said, wow, there's an example of how they're doing it. Other brands are reimagining their business format, like Walmart, I think we mentioned earlier, turning 160 of their parking lots into drive-in theaters. So adopting these safer ways to interact and still create, more importantly, what Walmart did was create a sense of community that's been lost, right? And I have my beef with Walmart on a few levels, but I have hats off to them on that move. I think it's a win-win for everybody.
And I want to bring it back to a couple of weeks ago. It was how retailers will survive the pandemic. A lot of the retailers I spoke to that have, like you're saying, the e-commerce or the deliveries, they are in the black for the year. I think the hardest thing, and as I was driving around one Friday night, and I was just like, why is this? Why is the man? People are out, like they want to go out and they want to do something. And I think what's lost is our retailers are not using their space accordingly. I think we've gotten so used to the traditional. This is how we're going to use the space, rather than be creative and innovative. And the mall just said, look, we're going to start putting up a drive-in movie theater. And I was like, oh, that's what they're doing. They had a whole bunch of food trucks lined up there. Now, I'm not going to say I didn't see folks with masks. I don't know. I wasn't paying that much attention because it was a dark parking lot. But how retailers will survive the pandemic, y'all, if you haven't listened to that, it's episode 9. We put it out a couple of weeks ago. Listen to that, because Kent did go into detail about how to be able to survive and thrive, because he wrote another article. So if you have not already subscribed, please do so. So I just want to point that out, Kent, before you continue to move on, because
Sure. Yeah.
this is sometimes we might need that little poke or nudge or
Right.
reminder. You gotta use your space effectively. So you really hit that home on the last podcast.
Right. Well, thank you. So to wrap up, referencing my article from Smart Brief, I think what I'm advising marketers and brands to just basically be flexible and be attentive and be intentional. So we know that ad dollars are moving away from outdoor print over to digital media. The loss in ad spend total was actually has been moved to digital, and then the loss of total revenue from retailers is more than compensated for by e-commerce. So hence, if you're like, where's the recession? Spending is still up. And some of it was, initially it was hoarding, then it was safety. And then, well, people that are still employed aren't necessarily feeling it right now, the economic impact, at least not yet. So being aware of the channels, the mix, the messaging, which we'll get into a sec with Generation Novel. There's some interesting thoughts there. I do think that what I've been saying is what Brian Solis validates, which is people are looking for a sense of purpose from a brand, like what is your why, and what are you doing, like in terms of social responsibility. I think brands that are not taking a stand on race, which I don't believe should be a political issue, but clearly apparently appears to be, that there are certain things that are, to me, apolitical. But anyway, there's those chances that you may feel you're taking a chance. I say you're firing your worst customers if you come out, for equality. That's just my bag. And then just, continue to refine your digital savvy. So keeping in mind the customer journey is to be a blend of online and offline in the path. And now there's just a little more digital, right? There's more steps in digital. And so changing up how you target, when you target. Basically, it's another plug for a previous podcast I think we did on omnichannel marketing. Understanding and hitting people with the right message at the right time in the right context. And less of that, it happens to be outdoor traditional media, sports sponsorships are vaporized or, being re-evolved and reimagined. So it's really about where do we find, when people on their computer and on the internet, where are they consuming media and where are they spending their time? And that's where we need to figure out where to be. So that's in all outlined in my article, COVID-19 Changed Consumer Behavior and Marketing Strategy, from August 31st on Smart Brief. But what I want to mention is on Fast Company, from the 8th of September, there was an article, How COVID-19 Created a New Kind of Consumer in Just 90 Days. And this is with Brian Solis, actually wrote it. And the subhead is, after 2 decades of steady growth, the trajectory of digital consumerism went into hyperdrive when the pandemic changed everything, giving us Generation N. So what Generation N stands for is Generation Novel, which is basically, it's unique in that it's not Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen X, boomers, or the greatest generation. It is a cross-generational psychographic of what we're now calling digital first consumers that have been galvanized by this the disruptive effects of COVID. And so what's happening is people that started out online, it hasn't really changed much for a Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen X. So the millennials and some of those Gen X, we have been online. Now, the Gen Z and Gen Y are more digital natives, but what COVID has done is turned a lot of the boomers and the rest of Gen X into this generation novel. They've all glued everybody together because out of necessity, right? Everybody, if you want to keep up with your friends and family, if you want to continue to work remotely, you have to embrace technology, right? So these are now digital consumers that are working from home or trying to find a new job from home, but whatever the case, they need, internet and a computer is the new normal. Everybody's got to have one. So what I find interesting that Brian Solis points out from his research on Generation Novel is that it's a step beyond a generation he identified years ago called Generation C for Generation Connected, which I think is basically Gen X, Gen Y, and a little Gen Z, Gen Y, and a little Gen X. And it was by choice that they're digital first. They define themselves based on their digital choices of being mobile screen primarily and moving from screen to screen. But Generation N has a unique twist. And what's going on is that he calls them powerful somatic markers, basically that has really solidified this group. It's all these emotional bookmarks created by what is going on right now. So, when you look at the media, you've got things like daily death tolls, you've got, infection rates in cases, you've got businesses closing, you've got fires, you've got unemployment, you've got riots and protests and police brutality, all of these things. So according to Accenture, he highlights a report, some of the statistics, 64% of consumers are fearful for their own health. That is the pandemic. And for us in the Pacific Northwest, the smoke in the air. 82% are fearful for the health of others. So that's good. We're more selfless and selfish, apparently, 82 versus 64%. Another 64% are worried about the impact on personal job security. So, you've mentioned like you've been trying to navigate this pandemic with your consulting business and the marketing side, and there are tough days, and I've felt them as well. But typically, as an entrepreneur, business owner, we theoretically have more job security than an employee that can be axed at any moment, yet we still feel that pain. And for me, it's feeling the pain of having 10 employees, and we're relatively small right now, and their lives in the mix, right? And trying desperately not to make them a casualty, right, of a necessary trimming of costs. And then lastly, 88% are worried about the impact on the economy. So whether they feel it now because they're unemployed or they're getting reemployed, a lot of the jobs have come back, maybe arguably prematurely, but it's still good to see people working and generating income. But one thing that really stood out is that he pulled a chart from McKinsey & Company, a research report, and said basically in a 3-month time span from March, April, May, the adoption of e-commerce, the e-commerce penetration, use of e-commerce grew 10 years of growth in 3 months. So basically it's a chart that hockey sticks, right? Up, like incredible growth. So it had forced people, if you want to eat, if you want to live, if you want to even have fun and pass time, you're going to need to use e-commerce, use your computer. And so I mentioned this earlier, but there's a link in the article, in this Fast Company article, about it takes 66 days for new behaviors to become automatic. So we are well beyond that. So what they're saying is, McKinsey's saying, listen, first of all, people are experimenting with new brands like never before for a variety of reasons, but primarily cost, and they're online, they're not in their usual stores. And they're thinking maybe there's something better that I can get right now. So they're trying different brands. 75% of US consumers have tried new brands. 60% of those expect to integrate those new brands into their post-COVID lives. So this is a huge message to marketers and brands that there used to be the numbers, and I've written this in previous articles, that you, in a recession specifically, if you increase your ad spend, you gain market share at a significantly higher rate. Basically, you're buying customers at a fraction of the cost because all your competitors are circling the wagons and cutting spend or eliminating it entirely. And what this is saying is not only can you gain market share, but you can gain new customers that you may not have ever experienced before because of this unique perfect storm that you can argue that we can make some serious lemonade out of this lemon tree that we're experiencing right now. And so just to reiterate, there are a couple of things that Brian in his article outlines that it just validates my article. So e-commerce is the new normal. It is so that digital migration is key. Consumers, this is a point that he makes from an Ipsos study, consumers are still shopping from home even as stores are opening. They're choosing not to go back to those stores. So you mentioned the malls there. The malls are in upheaval right now, right? Now, when I've done some shopping in the neighborhood here at like Cascade Station out by the airport, it was pretty busy. So lots were full. So people are still, they want to get out of the house, but many people are saying, no, I'm still going to keep it safe and shop from home, or the convenience. They're getting a taste of that. And then digital as a channel is going to be the primary driver of revenue and new business for the foreseeable future. Contactless engagement, verifying my trend I mentioned. Social media. So I've seen completely opposite numbers on social commerce is real, but yet most people are not buying through social media. So depends on which study you look at. I would say social is increasing in importance, but my experience is it still doesn't sell anything near like what traditional channels like Google and arguably separate from like Facebook commerce marketplace and so forth, but just generally like on Pinterest and Instagram where you can have some shoppability. It's for specific brands.
I mean, just to throw out there too, I think, well, first of all, I called this, I think back in March, I did a video that was like the post-COVID economy, when I talked about one of the three main things you're going to see is everything's going to go digital, especially in the classroom. We all went digital because of stay-at-home orders in March, so spring break time, and they were like, oh, let's go back to finish the year because mainly for graduation, people to walk. I should say the students to walk and for the families to see that. And I was like, by teaching online and teaching in person, it is not the same. Your deliverables are executed in the delivery so much differently than as a face-to-face and online. And for it to make that switch, it's not the same. Now, this semester, I have been able to do both. But when it comes to doing both, I have to provide the same experience online that I am in the face-to-face. And it's a lot different, but that means everything's recorded. Interaction is different. And for, I would say our guinea pigs that are going through it right now, this is not what they expected. As you see with all these universities and colleges, now going to screening once a week, putting in more safety precautions, moving to digital and thinking that we're going to come back and not slowly integrate, but we're going to just go back to the way things were. I don't think it is. I don't think it's as a sustainable model, because I believe, and I'm sure there's data out there to support it, that a lot of folks were losing money, like restaurants that were over by the Portland Trailblazer Motor Center. That was, yeah, there's no way they're coming back. And then you think about so you have the restaurants there, but then developers come in to build condominiums, apartments, houses to say, okay, this is a good area because you got food, you get entertainment. We are no longer using those spaces for what they were intended for. So the ripple effect, we have still not yet seen the ripple effect of people slipping through the cracks of how, one, we can say, oh, we need to raise minimum wage. It's not that, it's livable wages. We talked about like the rent, like you said, as an entrepreneur or business owner, we know how to create income. But if you're an employee and you like being an employee, you are sweating bullets. You might not have a good restful sleep, because I'm meaning to say you might have a sleepless night. So being on the offensive, no matter if you are in business or if you are an employee, if you are a student, like you really have to be super flexible. I know you talked about that as marketers being agile, but it's just not a technology platform anymore for project management. This is the real deal, Holyfield, of being nimble and lean, because I think we still have not yet seen where folks, well, let's just say with Uber, they're losing money. They're going to possibly lose more money, but yet they're being used more than ever before still. So I don't think, and then, last time we talked about how Exxon dropped out of the Dow, and then now Salesforce is in there. It's a CRM. How many companies have not been using CRMs? So, we can finances, you can do ledgers, you can do all that stuff, but eventually we're all going to have to be able to thrive in a digital world. And even I would say, just from the students that I've been in my classroom to my own kids, just because they're digital natives doesn't mean that they know how to make things work in the digital space, and how to problem solve and how to communicate, how to put things together. That is a key issue where I think some of the older generation, they could help, but they're like, I don't want to do this technology. Well, now you're being forced to. But I know some folks are still going to be the laggards and not going to want to participate at all. But this is, I think, a definitely a conversation that could be done all day long and talked about. How can not just a retailer, but how also can a manufacturer, not just a manufacturer, continue to thrive, but what about people in the healthcare industry where they have products, they can buy them online, but you got to sample them. What does that look like? And like you were saying about uh, going to Target and shopping, but is it just better for me to get it delivered to my home? Or look, I'm not going to go in the store, I'm going to get it brought to my car. So the options now, if I'm going to get a retail store, can I get some parking spaces so then I can do the delivery to this car? These are the things I don't think companies are not having, or conversations are not having, but it needs to be. So we just still have not yet seen the best model out there, because Amazon is not moving forward with their cashless store model, and with the Whole Foods. So even Amazon hasn't figured out how does that work when they have the technology and the funding to do so. So there's no exact science just yet. So it's kind of like we still got to stay nimble as we work our way through.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Now, I will say, I'll leave you with this. Solis makes some recommendations on a Generation N game plan, but this is very similar to recommendations I made around staying flexible. He's number one, suggesting that you observe. So look at the customer journey and how it's changed, physical, digital, et cetera, through the lens of this new generation, and organize your information, organize your data, organize your analytics so you can understand what's happening. Then he's saying you should operationalize, meaning you get management to buy in that these are these key touch points, and this is how we're going to message people in these touch points. Invent, so create new value or new products or new services. How can you make our lives as Generation N more valuable, or just consumers in general? And lastly, measure. Obviously, you create those key performance indicators, KPIs, and you measure against them. But I think customer satisfaction is still going to be really important when you look at the long haul of changing behavior. And if you want these people, these new advocates and customers to stay with you, you got to give them a good reason. So make sure that customer service experience is strong. In fact, I think you're better off investing in a better customer experience than in your product. When people's expectations are a little different right now, I think they just feel that they want to be connected. They want to feel appreciated. All of these things are important. So Solis has, as always, on point recommendations in his piece.
So I didn't properly introduce you, but where can people find you at, and who are you? What do you do? What do you talk about? Your business owner. We never talked about that.
Right. So, Kent Lewis, president and founder of Anvil Media. We're celebrating 20 years of measurable marketing and success. And thank you. Starting next month, we have a press release going out next week to talk about it. And so bottom line is you can find me on the Twitter at Kent J. Lewis, on LinkedIn at Kent Lewis. And we have a ton of resources on our website at anvilmedia.com. Come check us out and let us know if you have any questions or need any help.
That's awesome. So Ken is not a first time guest on the show. He's been doing it for, I want to say at least two, maybe 2.5, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
When we were doing Social Entrepreneur, Nathan A. Webster, now it's Let's Talk Marketing with Nathan A. Webster. So for you listeners out there that like say, hey, this is awesome, this is good, hey, please feel free to reach out to us. On LinkedIn, you can find me at Nathan A. Webster, Instagram, Nathan Webster 543. Even our Facebook at NW Associates LLC. And on the Twitter, Nathan A. Webster. I know there was a lot of handles that were thrown out there, but just Google us. You'll find us. I promise you will. And I am looking forward to also, to be real and keep it out there, dabbling in my own e-commerce. So I have a store. It's called NW Love. People have asked about my logo and some of the things I say, so I'm putting it out there because I think nothing makes God happier when you can be unapologetically you. So I'm all about being you, dream big, and do not settle. So you can go to ndublove.com. Go check out my store. I just put it out, so it's Shopify. So you can go check it out, NW. I just launched it. We got to be putting out some hoodies, some long sleeve tees. Might put some hats out there, y'all. And this is all going to support for the business, the podcasting. We have not had any podcast sponsors just yet. So for you businesses out there that think like, hey, I would love to have my name thrown out there, please hit us up at info@nwebsterllc.com. We are focused on marketing, business, and personal development. So we've been doing this for 4 years. Ken, just to let you know, I've had the best month of podcasting last month. Right now, I'm planning to triple our downloads. So I'm pretty excited about that. So thanks for your contributions.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations. That's fantastic. And frankly, not totally surprising.
Yeah, it's for those folks that do want a podcast, like it costs money. It's not cheap, but I love doing it. I love podcasting. I love talking with folks. So for those, again, that this is your first time listening, can you please give your handles where they can find you and any events you have coming up for Anvil Media?
Yeah, so you can find me at anvilmedia.com or on the Twitter at Kent J. Lewis. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Kent Lewis. Next major event, we have a Lunch and Learn webinar on SEO trends on the 16th. More information on our website. And then on October 6th, I'm doing my quarterly social media marketing training through SCORE PDX. So if you're familiar with SCORE, check out the Portland workshop series, and I'll see you online on the 6th.
Awesome. Yes. Y'all, if you haven't already, make sure you go follow Kent on his handles at LinkedIn, Twitter. He is verified too. And you're an influencer. What number are you?
You mean a digital marketing influencer?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was last year, and I was down at the very bottom of the top 100, like 92. And then this year I slipped off the list because I don't, do it full time.
You're like 101, 104?
Yeah, I probably won't. That's exactly right. That'd be my guess, but they won't. BuzzSumo won't tell me. So.
All right, y'all. Well, I want to say thank you for tuning in. For those that are listening, I'm starting to also put things up put these videos up on our YouTube. So go check out our YouTube page as well. You will find it at NW Associates LLC. Y'all, I just want to say thank you so much for all your downloads, to all the worldwide listeners that's been listening. It's been the most absolute pleasure serving you, doing this podcast, because I love, especially when you reach out to say thank you. This helped you here. This helped you here. Anytime I wanted to quit, someone has reached out to me, and I just want to say thank you for your support throughout the years. And Kent, thank you for joining the show today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So with that, y'all, I wish you nothing but the best. Dream big and Godspeed.